Discover the amazing moment when one brave girl transformed a mafia boss's mute son's life forever. Emily Carter sat behind the counter of her family's mechanic shop, staring out the grimy window at the faded reality of her small town. Cars trickled in, but even that sense of normalcy weighed heavy on her. She watched customers fidget nervously, counting out spare change to pay for repairs. This was life in a town dominated by struggle, the laughter of friends just beyond reach, but always accompanied by the pressure of responsibility. The paintbrushes and canvases she craved lingered in the back of her mind, taunting her every time her fingers itched to create. Her parents had invested everything in this shop, hoping to reclaim financial stability while fumbling to piece together their family's legacy. The expectations loomed like a dark cloud, demanding her compliance. "This is where you belong, Em," her dad would remind her, his voice a quiet plea for assistance. She would nod, trapping her artistic dreams in the confines of unscrewed car parts and engine oil, all while a fire simmered beneath her skin. What if there was another path? In the midst of these swirling thoughts, the town began whispering again about Salvatore, Sal, Rossi, the local mafia boss. His son, Marco, was a recluse, sinking further into the shadows, mute as a secret kept hidden. Emily had seen him from afar, a boy burdened by his family's infamous name. But during a fateful trip to the local art supply store, she stumbled upon a sight that captivated her. Through the haze of paint fumes, she watched as Marco let loose a storm of colors onto an empty canvas. Each stroke seeped with a rawness that she could almost touch. Curiosity bubbled within her. She saw a kindred spirit in him, a longing for expression that reflected her own. The thought of connecting with Marco ignited both intrigue and fear. The cafeteria table where she would face the glares and whispers of her peers loomed in her mind, sweating with disapproval. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." "Now let's continue." Tentatively, she approached Marco, her heart pulsating with the fear of rejection. To her surprise, he welcomed her, sketching their budding friendship into a narrative of unbridled creativity. Each painting resulted in a dialogue of unspoken words. Marco's muted past began to morph with strokes of hope, his art speaking volumes she felt underneath her skin. An art competition loomed before them, promising a glimpse into a future where artistry might outweigh the weight of their names. However, lurking darkness became palpable one evening when Sal discovered their project. He towered over his son, the tension thick as thunder and the unspoken threat palpable. In that moment, Emily felt the walls of the shop closing in, the weight of expectations tightening around her chest. Protect what felt safe or fight for something ethereal. Her pulse raced as she stood at the crossroads of her emotions, caught between loyalty to her family and a desperate need for change. As she looked into Marco's eyes, she pondered whether she could shatter the chains binding them both, whether they could emerge from the silent narrative dictated by others or be swallowed by the town's stigma once more. The world outside blended into a haze of uncertainty, leaving a single question lingering in the air. Would bravery flourish in the face of fear, or would it wither under the weight of history? The town's biases hung heavy, and the competition was mere days away. The clock ticked steadily. Where would it lead them? The decision loomed before Emily like a chasm, and the pressure of the impending competition began to constrict her thoughts. All the familiar noise of the mechanic shop faded to a distant hum, replaced by the vivid colors of Marco's laughter mingling with the messy splatters of their recent work. What had started as an escape now felt like purpose, and every brushstroke had woven an unbreakable bond between them. "Are you okay?" Marco's question cut through the haze, concern evident in his expressive dark eyes as he interpreted her silence. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, the tightness in her chest growing stronger. Shrugging her shoulders as if to release the heaviness, she stepped closer to the canvas they had been painting, a swirl of yellows and blues morphing into a sunrise that stirred emotions deep within her. "I wish we could just show this to the world without worrying." As the days crept closer to the deadline, each conversation with Marco felt like an exercise in defiance against their circumstances. The art they created together revealed not just talent, but a shared will to break free both from the expectations of their families and the oppressive town dynamic. There was a growing realization that this competition wasn't just about passing judgment on their art, it was about defying the roles that had long been dictated to them. Emily felt the weight of her parents' sacrifices, but in turning her gaze to Marco, she felt irritation bubbling alongside determination. Why should we hide away because of who our families are? This can't be all there is for us. Marco nodded, a flicker of resolve igniting in his expression. It wasn't enough just to paint, they had to challenge the narrative of their lives. It was time to claim their voices, however muted by circumstance they had once been. The idea swept through her a tide of possibility. But with it came fear. What would Sal do if he discovered their plans? What if their family's legacies crushed everything they worked so hard to build? Let us do this, Marco. Not just for us but to show everyone what we can create together. A rush of adrenaline surged through her, transforming her hesitation into a fierce sense of ambition. She put her hand on the canvas, the paint cool against her fingers, a grounding reminder of the reality they were shaping, but then, the echo of Sal's menacing presence flashed in her mind. Every moment spent advancing would pull them deeper into a potential whirlwind of chaos. Looking at Marco, she could see an underlying fear mirrored in his posture, the weight of his lineage competing fiercely against a burgeoning desire for freedom. Together, they would need to navigate these treacherous waters. As the night crept in, Emily found herself leaning into this newfound emotional territory. The stakes were high, and as that tension wrapped around her like an old, familiar cloak, she breathed deeply, steadying herself. This was more than testing their skills, it was a definitive stand against the past. Are we ready to face whatever comes our way? Emily asked, half afraid of the answer, half desperate for the courage to proceed. Marco's answer was silent, yet it reverberated in the force of his steady nod. They exchanged a glance, unspoken confidence bridging the distance. The challenge was more daunting than anything they had faced before, and the thought of failure weighed upon her shoulders, but a flicker of hope brightened in the darkness. They would paint their journey no matter the outcome. Just then, the door to the shop creaked open, abruptly shattering the tranquility. Emily's heart raced at the sound, recognizing the familiar silhouette. It was Sal, a looming figure shrouded in the chaos of his world, entering their space with intent. The moment of truth was no longer a distant possibility, it had arrived on their doorstep. Would their artistic revolution crumble before it began? Or would they ignite a flame that could not be extinguished? Sal stepped into the mechanic shop, his presence saturating the air with an oppressive weight. A moment turned into ages as Emily fought the instinct to retreat, to hide her canvas behind the shadows of uncertainty. She could feel Marco tense beside her, muscles corded with anticipation, poised like a coiled spring. The vibrant colors on the canvas seemed to pale in comparison to Sal's dominant persona. "What are you two doing?" Sal's voice cut through the stillness, gravelly and unyielding. Emily could sense a challenge, laced with the promise of disapproval. She opened her mouth to speak, but words faltered. It was one thing to discuss dreams with Marco in private, but voicing them in the presence of the very legacy they sought to defy was an entirely different battle. In that moment, Emily understood, it was time to inventory the courage she'd been cultivating. "Just painting," she finally replied, voice steadying with resolve she barely felt. "Working on something meaningful." Sal moved closer, a scowl forming as he examined the canvas. Emily's heart thundered a silent countdown to confrontation. "Meaningful?" He scoffed, shooting her a glance that curled disdain into the corners of his gaze. "You waste your time here, painting nonsense, while you should be preparing for what really matters." That comment ignited something within her. How many times had she internalized that sort of dismissal? The painting behind her, the dreams intertwined in the vivid strokes, wasn't nonsense, it was the very essence of who she was emerging to become. She took a breath, centering herself, her eyes meeting Marco's in a shared resolve. "Maybe it matters more than you think," Emily countered, surprising herself with the strength in her tone. A flicker of surprise crossed Sal's face, quickly stifled under years of gruff authority. "Watch it, Emily," he warned. "You don't want to tread where you don't belong." Emily felt a surge of defiance. This was not just a confrontation, this was an opportunity for transformation. Each word was a step upon a pathway she had never envisioned herself navigating, each heartbeat pulsed with the adrenaline of risk. She could feel Marco beside her, his silent solidarity amplifying her courage, pushing at the boundaries of Sal's influence. This isn't just about you or me, it's about taking control of our lives. I'm tired of running from what makes us feel alive. This painting is our chance to break free from what you expect of us, she declared, feeling liberated as those thoughts slipped from her lips. Sal's expression shifted, the bemused facade slipped as a hint of annoyance cracked through his stoic exterior. For the first time, doubt flashed across his features, as though he sensed the tremors of a shifting dynamic. Is it worth it? He challenged, almost intrigued. What will your family think? What will anyone think? You have obligations. It struck Emily like a jolt. The weight of legacy loomed large, intertwining with fear. Those thoughts, however, were quickly met with a tidal wave of clarity. This wasn't just about defiance, it was about creating a space where she and Marco could speak their truth. Maybe the obligation is to ourselves first, she concluded, her voice piercing through the tension. Maybe it's time to show everyone what we are capable of together. Sal's silence hung in the air, a heavy pause that only served to elevate the tension around them. He turned towards the canvas again, his eyes narrowing. You think you can just paint away the expectations? He scoffed, but Emily noticed the way he lingered at the edge of their work, as if drawn in by curiosity rather than disdain. Maybe not paint them away, she replied, but paint over them. Just as the spark of challenge ignited the atmosphere, Sal's cell phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the moment. He stepped back abruptly, eyes narrowing before exiting the shop, leaving a gap filled with his discontent. Emily exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Adrenaline cooled but uncertainty remained. The confrontation drifted thickly in the air. Standard expectations had shifted, releasing just enough room for them to slip through, and yet, the question lingered, what lay beyond that door? Was the real challenge ahead, and could they truly wield the power of their art against the weight of legacy? Emily turned to Marco, both an ally and an equal in this process of rebirth. Do you think he'll come back? She asked, her mind racing at the possibilities. I don't know, Marco replied, his voice a mixture of concern and new determination. Whatever came next would shape not only their art but their identities. A quiet resolve formed within Emily. It was time to strategize their response. They couldn't shy away now, not when everything was irrevocably changing. With purpose surging through her veins, Emily returned to the canvas. This was just the beginning. As she heard the muffled sound of Sal's footsteps trailing off, she felt the pulse of opportunity open before her. Ultimately, the question remained, how would they confront the realities of their lives, armed with ambition and brush in hand? As the door swung shut behind Sal, it felt as if the very air shifted, heavy with possibilities. Emily took a moment, stilling her hands that trembled in a mixture of adrenaline and fear. Marco's presence beside her acted as an anchor. She turned her gaze to the canvas, which seemed to shimmer with the intensity of their exchange, as if urging her to paint like it was the last thing she would ever do. What if we invite him back? Marco suggested tentatively, his brow furrowed. What if we offered him a chance to really see what we're doing? Emily's heart raced at the idea. It was a gamble, but wasn't that the essence of taking control of their lives? Relying on Sal, even in this minimum capacity, could yield unexpected dividends. What if they could show him the artistry, the passion, the vision that lay beneath their brush strokes? There's strength in confrontation, but I think we need to redefine what confrontation means, she replied, her determination solidifying into a plan. What if we presented our work not as a rebellion against his expectations, but as an invitation to understand who we are? Dare to invite, Marco mused, a slight smile breaking his previous tension. The words hung between them, invigorating the space with newfound energy. Emily felt the stirrings of creativity simmering just beneath the surface, a desire to transform not only their art but also their relationships and roles. She stepped back, taking in the canvas anew. We can create a series, something that tells a story, she said, visions spooling into her mind. We'll show him the beauty of our rebellion, but in a way that connects, instead of polarizing. As the idea crystallized, the need to step outside of their own feelings of inadequacy became paramount. Emily envisioned vibrant colors swirling together, representing the tensions and hopes of their lives, all grounded in the grit of where they came from. They could weave a narrative, one that spoke to long-silenced dreams buried under layers of expectation. With each brushstroke, they could invite Sal into their world, showing him not just what they were capable of, but challenging him to question everything he has ever known about art and success. This wasn't about rebelling against an authority, this was about an invitation to growth. In a burst of inspiration, Emily picked up her brush, swiping bold strokes across the canvas. "We'll call it Overcoming It. Tell a story of who we are and where we're going," she declared, feeling alive and electric with purpose. Each stroke felt like liberation, rebellion, and most importantly, communication. "What if we include phrases, quotes, parts of our own narratives?" Marco suggested, the spark of collaboration igniting his eyes. "We can caption each piece to add depth, to connect with each other and maybe even with him." Emily nodded, the excitement of possibility flowing through her. "Yes. It can be a dialogue, a challenge to him, to see us as real, as passionate individuals rather than just extensions of what's expected." But as they worked feverishly, weaving together color and story, a nagging shadow flickered at the corner of Emily's mind. What if Sal rejected this offering? What if he scoffed at their attempts to reach him? She brushed aside the doubt and refocused on the canvas. "This isn't just about him, this is for us," she reminded herself, pushing her anxiety deep into the backdrop of passion and creativity. Breaking through individual fears meant honoring their shared vision. The hours melted away as each stroke transformed the canvas into a tapestry of their journey. She could feel the weight of expectation dissipate, replaced by the warm, vibrant energy of self-discovery. They were laying the groundwork for a connection that had the potential to change everything, starting with themselves. But as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting an orange glow through the windows of the shop, Emily paused, realizing that the scorn Sal offered was not the most substantial obstacle. No, it was the confrontation between her own fears and desires that truly loomed ahead. Was she ready to stand not only as an artist but also as a challenger of her legacy? The question loomed large, tantalizingly close. Was she prepared to extend her hand towards a man trapped in shadows, to weave hope through artistry? The implications of their endeavor sank into her consciousness. "Let us meet again tomorrow," Marco said, breaking the reverie as he gazed at their growing masterpiece. His face shone with determination. "We can make this bigger than ourselves." In that moment, Emily knew she was about to embark on a journey far deeper than she had anticipated, one that could redefine everything. "Tomorrow, we show Sal what we've created," she resolved, the certainty in her voice palpable. But still, the undertow of doubt tugged at her, rippling through her confidence as she wondered if inviting her past into their present would truly bear fruit. As she faced the canvas, the horizon of truth awaited her. What would emerge from this artful confrontation of identities? The morning sun spilled through the studio windows, igniting the room with a vibrant gilded warmth that mirrored Emily's anticipation. She stood before the canvas, the bold strokes of color and whispered narratives from last night echoing in her mind. Her heart raced with both excitement and trepidation. Today was not merely an act of creation, it was a confrontation, a revelation of self-worth and identity. Marco arrived shortly after, his energy infused with purpose. "Ready to unveil our work, Emily?" His voice was steady, a calm amidst the storm of Emily's thoughts. "More than ready," she replied, masking the fluttering in her chest. She couldn't afford self-doubt now. Instead, she needed to embrace every emotion swirling within her, converting it to fuel for their impending presentation. This moment wasn't just about proving themselves to Sal, it was about affirming her existence as an artist who had a voice, a vision worthy of exploration. Around noon, as they meticulously added final touches to the piece titled Overcoming, Emily felt the weight of her own expectations settle around her like an oppressive fog. Embedding key phrases into the canvas was deeply personal, each word pulling her into the depths of her own struggles. Did she have the courage to expose her truth to Sal, a man not known for sensitivity or understanding? "Why don't we write about the things we've overcome?" Marco suggested, his eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and resolve. "Let them see our journey." Emily pondered this for a moment. She thought of the nights spent wrestling with self-doubt and fear, of navigating expectations that felt suffocating. Yes, she agreed, now feeling a level of adrenaline rushing through her veins. Let us include the phrases we've been holding onto, the words that represent our battle with Sal's perception. As they crafted the final captions, Emily found herself reflecting on her past. She remembered a younger version of herself who had cowered in corners, who had allowed others' judgments to dictate her worth. Would this new Emily the artist, the rebel, be strong enough to dismantle those lingering anxieties? Eventually, they finished the work, stepping back to view the entire canvas as a cohesive story. The swirl of colors intertwined with raw, honest phrases began to tell a narrative richer than anything she had ever created before. It felt like a declaration, a challenge drenched in vulnerability and strength. "Are you ready?" Marco asked, his breath mingling with the tension in the air. The moment hung there, heavy, filled with the weight of anticipation. "Not just for Sal, I'm ready for myself," Emily demanded, the resolve burning through her previous hesitations. This was less about their art facing judgment but more so about dismantling the fears that had long held her captive. As they arranged their piece in the main room, the vibrant colors seemed to pulse with life. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, willing her doubts to dissipate and replaced by visions of acceptance and open dialogue. Sal might not fully appreciate their work, but today was about more than just his approval. It was about bridging the gap between expectation and authenticity. "Whatever happens," she expressed, meeting Marco's gaze, "we've already won. We've challenged ourselves. True. But now we must face him open for transformation or rejection," Marco reminded her gently, a note of concern echoing in his tone. At that moment, the sound of the door creaking open pulled them from their moment of reassurance. Emily's breath caught in her throat as Sal stepped into the gallery, his imposing figure instantly dimming the colorful warmth surrounding the piece. The challenges laid ahead now stood stark and unyielding. Would he see them? Would he understand their intention? As silence enveloped them, Emily's heart hammered against her chest. She stood poised, ready to confront not only Sal but every part of her that held fear. The boundaries of their pasts were about to clash in a way she never could have predicted. Was she ready to let her inner artist shine? The tension was palpable. Today was not merely a presentation, it was a reckoning, and it could change everything. Emily's breath steadied as the heavy silence enveloped her, a cocoon of anticipation and anxiety. Behind the unyielding gaze of Sal, the room felt both alive and suffocating. She could sense the way he surveyed their work, his expression impassive, as if he were dissecting a puzzle only he could solve. The vibrant hues she and Marco had infused with meaning seemed almost taunting in their brilliance, begging for acknowledgement. "Interesting," Sal finally broke the silence, his voice gravelly yet devoid of warmth. His eyes flicked between the colors and phrases, but it was impossible to discern his thoughts. Emily felt a knot twist in her stomach, a wave of doubt washed over her as she questioned whether it might all be for nothing. "Interesting?" Marco echoed cautiously, searching for a clue as to where Sal's mind wandered. "Yes, interesting. But do you think it works?" Sal leaned forward, his demeanor shifting ever so slightly. "Does it communicate what you think it does?" Emily's heart raced. This was the moment she had prepared for, yet suddenly she felt unmoored. Would he dismiss their work as naive? Her voice faltered just for a heartbeat before resolve surged once more. "It's not just about art, it's about our journeys, the struggles we've faced," she said, forcing confidence into her tone. Each word was a step towards self-definition. "What struggles?" Sal pressed, his tone neutral yet probing. It should have frightened her, this intimate exposure of self. But instead, a surprising calmness enveloped her as she recognized Sal's question as an opportunity, an opening to communicate her truth. "I've battled with my identity, with seeking approval where none was given. This piece represents overcoming those fears." The words tumbled out of her mouth like stones, each one steadying the shaky terrain of her inner turmoil. "Fears don't define you," Marco added, his voice providing a much-needed anchor. "We wanted to show that each stroke tells a story, one of resilience." Sal's eyebrows knit together as he processed their responses. "Art can be powerful. But it needs context. The weight of his words lingered, igniting a spark within her. What did she have to lose? She hadn't come this far just to surrender to uncertainty. Context is born from courage, Emily declared, recalling each struggle and moment of doubt she had entwined in the piece. Context comes from sharing our truth. Sal regarded her with newfound interest, as if the barriers he had erected were beginning to shift. So you're declaring your art as an extension of yourself, exposing vulnerabilities? Yes. Exactly, she replied with increasing clarity, her voice steady as she wove her experience into every phrase. This isn't just about how you perceive it, Sal. It's a manifestation of what I refuse to hide any longer. For the first time, she caught a flicker of something within Sal, a hint of intrigue mixed with challenge. It brought an expanse of determination into her heart. Here was the confrontation she craved, an opportunity to shift perceptions, both his and her. As they discussed their intentions, a tension began to evolve in the room. Sal's questions grew deeper, probing into the nuances of artistry, intent, and personal struggle. Emily felt the weight of his scrutiny but also an unexpected empowerment. Each answer revealed another layer of her identity that had long been concealed, and she relished the sensation of unraveling it before him. Yet, in the back of her mind, she wondered, was his interest genuine, or was this merely an exercise in curiosity? The moment felt electric, yet precarious, as she navigated the boundary between affirmation and rejection. She sensed Marco tensing next to her as Sal studied them both. Tell me, Sal finally breathed, his irritation replaced with a more contemplative demeanor. What happens if I don't see it the way you do? What if this doesn't resonate with me? Emily swallowed hard, her heart pounding. This was the confrontation she had feared, yet it was also the moment where she could redefine the narrative not only for Sal but, more significantly, for herself. That's okay, Sal. Permission to disagree exists, but here I am, offering my truth all the same. Sal's eyes narrowed, and she caught a glimpse of intrigue replacing his earlier stoicism. Something was shifting in him, and now it was time to lean into that transformative moment. The air was ripe with tension, as the possibility of conflict loomed and potential for connection blossomed. This was no longer merely an evaluation of art, it was a reckoning of beliefs and identities. Should I take this as more than just a presentation? Sal finally asked, a fractional smile hinting at his lips. Are you confident enough to invite me into your world? Eager anticipation surged within Emily. She had carved a space for her voice, and she was ready to embrace it fully. What might Sal discover if he ventured beyond the surface? Absolutely, she replied, her heart racing with newfound determination. This was more than she had hoped for, it was an invitation into uncharted waters. In that moment, they stood on the brink of a revelation. Would Sal accept this new understanding, or would her courage collide with his defenses, reigniting old struggles yet again? As silence hung in the air, Emily sensed an unsettling shift in the atmosphere. Sal's questions had opened a door, but she felt a weight pulling her back, an instinctual fear of what lay on the other side. This was unfamiliar territory. Art had always been a shield, a canvas where she painted her emotions hidden from the world. Yet here she stood, offering her vulnerabilities to an audience that could either embrace or dismiss them. Sal leaned back, calculating, and Emily's nerves were on high alert, sensing the danger of his scrutiny. Why do you think sharing your truth matters? Why should anyone care? His voice had regained that challenging edge, the type that had made her feel small countless times before. But this was different. She had invited him in, now, he was questioning not just her art, but the very essence of her being. Because art reflects our humanity, Sal, she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. If I can share my journey, it can resonate with someone else. I'm not just seeking validation, I want to connect. He stared at her, considering, and she could feel the tension in the air like a tightly wound spring. This was her moment, not merely to justify her work but to prove her strength. She recalled the nights spent doubting her choices, fighting against the instinct to retreat into anonymity. But there it was, that unwavering flicker of determination rekindled from within. Who was she becoming? I'm not here to create art for your approval, Emily continued, feeling the embers of conviction grow brighter. I'm here to provoke thought, to spark dialogue. Isn't that what we strive for as artists? Sal's expression softened slightly, and she seized that fraction of a change. Maybe what we create represents our most honest selves. What if we stopped worrying about whether it resonated with everyone? At that moment, the realization hit across her psyche. This wasn't about winning Sal over. It was about asserting her identity, her worth. The decisions she had made, every brushstroke, every late night spent perfecting their piece, suddenly fused together into a powerful declaration of self, a testament to all she had overcome. Art allows us to confront discomfort, she pressed on, feeling invincible. It can challenge belief systems and open hearts. I want to push those boundaries, not comfort them. She saw him shift in his seat, something igniting in his eyes, a glimmer of recognition, perhaps. The transformation in the air was palpable. He was no longer just the observer but a participant in their exchange. Throughout their conversation, Emily picked up on Marco's quiet support beside her. It fortified her resolve, reminding her that she wasn't alone in this. Whether Sal understood their vision or not seemed irrelevant now. What mattered was that they had given voice to what had often felt voiceless. Do you ever doubt what you're pursuing? Sal's voice broke through her reflection, deep and probing. Emily's thoughts spiraled back to her early days of art, a time of unyielding self-doubt that often left her paralyzed. The memories churned in her mind. Every day, she admitted, a surprising honesty creeping into her answer. But without that fear, how can I know what must be expressed? She watched as he mulled over her words, weighing the implications. For the first time, Sal smiled, a genuine movement that seemed to lighten his stoic demeanor. You might just have the conviction to make someone uncomfortable enough to think, he said, his tone contemplative. But what happens when the discomfort doesn't lead to understanding? When it leads to resistance? The question hung before her like a delicate thread waiting to be plucked. Emily inhaled deeply, considering the weight of his inquiry, and in that moment, her mind raced forward. Yes, there would always be resistance, fluctuating between acceptance and refusal. But still, she would push through to make her mark. I'm prepared for that too, she stated, an unwavering fire ignited within her. Because as long as I keep speaking my truth, I'm better equipped to face whatever comes next. Sal's nod was slow, thoughtful, as if he were peeling back layers of her discussion, revealing hidden insights. This exchange had metamorphosed what had begun as a critique became a dialogue teetering on the brink of collaboration. Emily sensed the shift. Perhaps this moment was more profound than she had anticipated. Perhaps you should take that further, he suggested, eyes brightening with intrigue. What if you expanded this dialogue beyond just yourself? What if your art was just the beginning? A spark ignited within her once more, punctuating his words. The next step beckoned, promising an avenue she hadn't yet considered. What was she truly capable of when she intertwined her art with the lives of others, challenging them to confront their own truths? The potential expansion of their project hung heavy in the air, rich with possibilities. Emily found herself at the precipice of not just personal discovery, but professional transformation. The art they created could be a springboard into uncharted territory. Let us explore that, she replied, excitement blending with trepidation. Let us see how far we can take it. Sal's expression transformed into something approaching encouragement, and for the first time in their discussion, she could sense genuine collaboration brewing. Then I suggest you prepare for the unexpected, he said, a glimmer of challenge returning. Your journey has just begun. A realization struck. She was on the path toward revealing a new vision, one that would reshape not just her art, but her very identity. With that thought swirling in her mind, an exhilarating anticipation coursed through her. What lay ahead was unclear, yet undeniably thrilling, as though a floodgate had opened, inviting her to plunge deeper into her creative depths. Where would this newfound partnership lead? Would they step confidently into the unknown, or find themselves unprepared for the revelations awaiting them? Emily's mind raced as Sal's words resonated within her. He was right, there was a wealth of potential in stretching the parameters of her artwork beyond her own emotions, allowing it to serve as a vessel for other stories. The weight of her past battles slowly began to mold into a more profound catalyst, one that could potentially uplift voices often left unheard, she had started creating with the notion that her art was an expression of her individuality, a reflection of her inner struggles and triumphs. But now, a new vision sparked with intensity. Could her journey not just belong to her but also act as a beacon for those around her? She pictured the transformative power of art reaching further, igniting dialogues that could change lives, not just her own. The days followed their conversation. Emily immersed herself in research and introspection, probing into diverse narratives of struggle and resilience. In the quiet corners of her studio, she found both solitude and inspiration. Fragments of unpursued stories were scattered like brush strokes, waiting for the right moment to be woven into a tapestry of collective experience. Each stroke she painted became not just an expression of her emotions, but an invitation to others. She envisioned creating pieces that challenged viewers to confront their own narratives. She thought deeply about the discomforts Sal had mentioned. What if she documented stories of pain, hope, and confrontation through her art, capturing the essence of vulnerability each person carried? The prospect thrilled her, yet insecurity lurked in the background. Would audiences embrace these deeper layers of meaning? Would people resonate with her depiction of their struggles? For the first time, the fear of rejection was no longer about her being judged individually. It was about the potential dismissal of others' experiences. Her art could become a bridge or a barrier, and that duality weighed heavily in her mind. With every canvas she painted, Emily threaded bits of her own story into the larger tapestry. The cathartic process of embracing different lives solidified her own identity as an artist in a way she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just about her anymore, but rather a commitment to push back against the silence that often surrounded discomfort. She was on the path to becoming an advocate of truth through her art. Feeling emboldened, she decided to take a bold step. Emily reached out to local communities, inviting people to participate in a collaborative project where they could share their experiences raw, unfettered, and real. The response was overwhelming. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and hope began flooding in, and with each new story, Emily felt the power of collective voices merging with her own. Yet, amid the excitement, doubt crept back in. What if the stories she gathered were too dark or uncomfortable for others to comprehend? What if they rejected the raw truth? She grappled with the very reason she sought out this new direction, to provoke thought, even if it meant facing uncomfortable realities. The fear gnawed at her, yet she resolved to honor those stories, to give them a platform no matter how unsettling they might be. As she moved forward, she felt a growing connection with those who shared their truths with her. It began to resonate deeply within her. They were courageous in unveiling their vulnerability, something she too had struggled with. Each shared experience nestled into her heart like brush strokes joining to form a larger piece of art. Unexpectedly, Marco appeared in her studio one evening, his presence radiating calm like an anchor amidst her swirling thoughts. He had been a quiet supporter during this transformative phase, but now she saw a flicker of excitement in his eyes as he scanned her new works, which lay scattered across the studio floor. "Emily, this work, it's powerful," he remarked, a hint of awe coloring his voice. "You're not just painting, you're building a movement." "I'm trying," she replied, her hands trembling slightly as she recalled the stories that inspired her. But what if it leads to backlash? What if they feel exposed instead of lifted? Then you have to be their shield. Protect their stories, safeguard their truth. He stepped closer, looking at her with unyielding intensity. "This is the moment to step up and amplify their voices. You need to showcase the rawness, even if it's uncomfortable." His words were a call to action, pushing her to confront the very core of her fears. Emily felt her heart racing, a mix of optimism and apprehension coursing through her. "Are you ready?" Marco asked, the challenge evident in his tone. "You're about to venture into something that could change how people perceive art and themselves." With that, a new surge of determination swept through her. The call was clear. She wouldn't let fear dictate the significance of their narratives. As she fell into the rhythm of her creative pursuit, a captivating thought lingered on the horizon. Was this not what life was all about? Splintering walls, unraveling silences, and weaving together a world of shared trials and victories through the artistic lens, the pieces began to fit together, revealing a landscape of potential transformation, a vivid tapestry of voices breaking through the noise. What awaited her on this journey was still shrouded in uncertainty, yet the promise of genuine connection illuminated the path. Emily paused, her heart pounding in anticipation of what lay ahead. The unexpected loomed large, and as much as that thought thrilled her, another question lingered on the tip of her tongue. How would she confront the inevitable resistance once they ventured into this uncharted territory of shared truths? The next phase awaited, filled with both the thrill of discovery and the shadow of doubt. What lay in store was as unclear as her own evolving identity, and she was ready to leap into whatever awaited her. The bright morning light streamed through Emily's studio windows, illuminating the canvases that lay strewn across the floor like pages of a story still being written. Each brushstroke held the promise of a new narrative, yet Emily felt the weight of her task press heavily on her shoulders. While the excitement of gathering stories stirred her heart, the looming uncertainty of presentation filled her with hesitation. She spent hours pacing the studio, mind racing with conflicting thoughts. How could she bring these experiences to life without overshadowing the individuals they belonged to? Would sharing their vulnerability risk further harm instead of healing? Each question flickered through her mind like a stroke of a brush illuminating, yet leaving shadows that haunted her resolve. Despite the doubts, Emily recognized that she couldn't retreat now. Every shared experience she documented represented a life, a heartbeat, a moment of truth she could now channel into her work. But the transformation from patron of their stories to the storyteller required more of her than she was prepared to give. They weren't just art subjects but souls deserving of reverence. Resolute, she decided she needed to confront her fears head-on. She began drafting an outline for an exhibition, detailing how the artwork would be presented alongside spoken narratives from those who contributed their stories. But how can I make sure their voices shine? She questioned to herself. This preparation forced her to consider deeper aspects: how to curate these personal tales without distorting their core messages. Days turned to weeks, and with every brushstroke, she grew more attuned to the nuances of each story. She would distill emotions into colors, creating a palette of vulnerability and strength intertwined. The studio transformed into a mosaic of optimism battling despair, a sanctuary where art could perhaps heal more than it could harm, yet, she still dreaded the inevitable confrontation with public reception. How would people react to the rawness of these narratives? Despite her growing confidence, doubt slithered back into her mind. Would they be ready to embrace difficult truths? Each concern reflected inherent fears of inadequacy that she had yet to shake off. As Emily prepared for the corresponding discussion sessions that would accompany the exhibit, she reached out to the contributors for their input. Each response weighed heavily on her heart. Some were eager, expressing gratitude for the amplification of their truths, while others hesitated, unsure of how their stories would be consumed. Then, unexpectedly, Marco proposed a follow-up event, a private gathering where they could explore their feelings about the impending public reaction together. Emily agreed, a blend of hope and apprehension swirling in her chest. She questioned whether introducing others to the art of vulnerability would elevate the experience or merely overwhelm those she sought to empower. When the gathering day arrived, Emily felt a peculiar sense of kinship with the contributors. They arrived, not as mere subjects but as co-authors of an evolving narrative. The atmosphere pulsated with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Conversations flowed as individuals discussed the depths of their stories, their fears and aspirations merging like colors on a canvas. Emily listened intently, her heart swelling with respect and admiration for their strength. However, amidst the discussions, she couldn't shake her premonition about potential backlash. What if someone reacted negatively? The thought paralyzed her momentarily, a flash of the perilous balance she was walking. Emily, Marco's voice broke through her reverie. Are you ready for what's next? He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, tackling the uncertainty head-on. I can't tell if I'm ready to showcase the beautiful mess of their stories, she admitted, her voice steady but unsure. Then let the stories guide you. It's not just about your art. It's about preserving their truths, he encouraged. Emily nodded, drawing strength from his support. But still, a new fear loomed, the fear of misunderstanding, of faltering hope. As she stood among an assembly of varied narratives, she felt her identity tethered to these individuals, questions gnawing persistently at her resolve. What if she amplified their voices only to become a conduit of confusion? The impending exhibition now felt like a colossal wave, ready to crash onto the shore of public scrutiny. Would her creation foster understanding or misunderstandings? With a heart full of resolve yet trembling with uncertainty, Emily took a deep breath. She had gathered stories brimming with the potential for connection. It was time to take a leap into the unknown, but as she prepared for that plunge, a familiar thought tugged at her, a new question materializing in her mind. Could the act of sharing vulnerability transform not just the audience but herself, awakening an unexpected strength within her? The moment to decide loomed large, and with it, the realization. Her evolution hinged not on the audible acceptance of others, but the inner strength to present a raw reflection of life's complexities. What began as a project of empowerment might very well become a confrontation of Emily's own emotional landscape. As the day of the exhibition dawned, Emily stood before her canvases, each one a vibrant testament to the stories she had unearthed. The studio, transformed into a gallery, pulsed with energy, but the anticipation felt more formidable than anything she had faced before. This wasn't merely an artistic showcase, it was a revelation. A mix of collaborators, friends, and strangers were streaming in, their laughter merging with the anxious beating of her heart. She glanced at the paintings adorned with narrative stories of pain, resilience, and triumph. Each brushstroke blended not just pigment, but an amalgam of voices, chorusing in a silent mission to confront the ghosts of their existence. Deep down, Emily recognized that this wasn't solely an exhibition about others, it was astoundingly personal. Today would be her final merge with fear, simultaneously exposing her artistic spirit and confronting her own truths. Would they resonate with the audience, or would they fall flat, misunderstood? She long battled with those demons, constantly unsure if her work could truly transcend individual experience to become a collective narrative. As guests meandered through the space, she saw Marco across the room, radiating calm. Their eyes locked, and he sent her a reassuring nod. In that instant, some of her anxiety receded. She was not alone. There was strength in their partnership. She could stand firm, not just as an artist, but as a conduit for shared realities. The opening remarks began, and Emily felt the pressure mount, heart racing faster than the ticking moments. She listened as Marco shared how their collective endeavor had empowered them both. The genuine connection between them extended beyond the confines of expectations and familial legacies, fusing into paths of newfound freedom. She realized this journey had forever altered her perspective. She was no longer shackled to the weight of the past. Taking the microphone, she felt a rush of clarity. The moment called for honesty. "Thank you for being here today," she began, her voice steady and clear. "This isn't just about showcasing art. It's about honoring the stories that often remain untold. It's about standing up against silence." As she spoke, she felt herself evolving right before her audience, a transformation from passive participant to empowered narrator of her journey. The words flowed from her as if they were a brush in hand, sweeping against the canvas of her past uncertainties and fears. "Today, I invite you not only to judge the artwork before you but to reflect on the narratives woven within it. These stories were shared with courage, and it's my hope that they resonate with your own experiences, because inside each of us is a brush waiting to create." The crowd was captivated, and Emily could see nods of affirmation and recognition echo through the gallery. Their gaze reflected understanding, and with that acknowledgement sparked an emboldened spirit within her. This was the answer she had been searching for. Her true purpose as an artist was to initiate dialogue, an invitation to confront the uncomfortable truths within us all. After her brief speech, she stepped back, finally feeling the weight of her journey unburden. The conversations that unfolded took on a life of their own, with audience members sharing their stories with her, connecting through the shared tapestry of their lives. They began to see themselves in the art, mirroring experiences intimately entwined within her narrative's fear, hope, struggle, and ultimate resilience. As the night unfolded, Emily stood taller, more confidently than she ever thought possible. The validation she sought had morphed from personal affirmation to collective experience, a shared consensus that transformed her art into a lifeline for others. Each new dialogue fostered a deeper sense of belonging, creating connections that felt like electrifying brushstrokes across her soul. Finally, a soft tap on her shoulder jolted her back to reality. Sal stood beside her, an unexpected figure in the vibrant space. "You've created something significant here, Emily," he said, his voice nearly a whisper yet resonating deeply. "You found a way to cut through your family's noise. This is your moment." Her heart leapt, buoyed by his unexpected acknowledgement. While it wasn't the ultimate validation she yearned for, it was a recognition of her evolution and understanding not just of herself as an artist, but as a vibrant individual capable of sharing vulnerability, igniting change, and embracing her truths. The night concluded with a sense of satisfaction, weaving through moments of laughter and reflective silence. Emily left the gallery, feeling lighter, anchored not by the weight of her family's expectations but fortified by her newly established identity. She had conquered her fears, transforming them into a kaleidoscope of possibility. Stepping outside into the cool night air, she gazed up at the stars shimmering overhead, each one a symbol of her journey. She realized her art had bridged her past with a hopeful future, affording her the clarity she always needed. It was time to embrace the artist she had become, one dedicated to challenging silence and inspiring connection. If you're inspired by Emily's journey of transformation, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss any future stories that resonate deeply. Leave a like now to ensure that this message of personal growth reaches those who need to hear it. Comment below your thoughts and reactions to Emily's metamorphosis. Your support fuels our mission, and don't wait even one more second to share this experience with at least 5 friends who are searching for their own path of empowerment.